HOA tried to tow my truck to park a Mercedes. She didn't know I own the towing company. I believe in process. Black coffee, no sugar. Keys in the right pocket. Wallet in the left. And most importantly, the parking permit sticker perfectly aligned on the bottom corner of the windshield. I don't ask for luxury. I don't need a red carpet rolled out every time I step out of my vehicle. I'm just Mike, a guy who wants to park his 2018 Ford F-150, a truck that's seen more mud than a pig farmer's boots but runs like a Swiss watch, into the exact concrete rectangle I pay for every single month. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of humid scorcher, where the asphalt feels like it wants to grab your boots and never let go. I had just pulled into the underground garage of Riverview Heights after a 14-hour shift dealing with the overturned tanker on the interstate. My high-visibility vest was stained with grease. My work boots were caked in dried mud, and my face probably looked like I'd been wrestling with a cold chute. My best friend, Dave, always tells me, "Mike, you own the biggest towing and recovery fleet in the tri-state area. Why are you still out there cranking winches and getting dirty?" Dave doesn't get it. Control doesn't come from sitting in an air-conditioned office pointing fingers. Control comes from knowing every bolt, every hydraulic line, and every rule of the road. And my number one rule living in this high-rise is simple. Don't touch my parking spot. I didn't choose this apartment for the Riverview or the infinity pool I've never used. I chose it for spot 404. It's a corner spot, flanked by a concrete pillar. It's 20 inches wider than the standard spots, perfect for a heavy-duty truck, and sits directly under a 4K security camera. I repainted the white lines myself with premium reflective paint. I installed a rubber bumper guard on the wall, and I bolted a metal sign into the concrete that reads, "Reserved Parking Unit 12B, Towing Enforced." As I rolled down the ramp, the fluorescent lights flickered, welcoming me home. I eased off the gas, ready for the singular, simple joy of backing my truck into it home. But as I rounded the corner, I saw it. My fortress had been breached. A Mercedes G-Wagon, white pearl paint so shiny I could probably shave in the reflection, was sitting in spot 404. It wasn't just parked. It was abandoned with arrogance. The left tires were crushing the white line I had lovingly painted. The rear end was sticking out into the driving lane. And worst of all, there was no resident sticker. No guest pass. Just a pristine, six-figure SUV squatting on my property, like it owned the deed. I sighed, killed the engine, and let the silence of the cabin wash over me. A flare of anger lit up in my chest, but I tamped it down. I don't do screaming matches. I don't do red-faced tantrums. I do leverage. I check my watch. 5:30 p.m. Rush hour in the garage. If I blocked this car in, I'd block the whole lane. If I leaned on the horn, I'd just be the loud jerk in the dirty truck. I stepped out. My steel-toed boots hit the concrete with a heavy, echoing clack. I walked up to the Mercedes. The air around it still smelled like expensive, cloying perfume, something sweet and aggressive. On the passenger seat sat a Hermes Birkin bag, the kind that cost more than my first 3 cars combined. The owner clearly wasn't someone who followed rules. To people like this, rules are just suggestions for the poor. I pulled out my phone, not to call the police, but to document. Snap, license plate. Snap, wide shot of the violation. Snap, close up of the tire over the line. Snap, the sign that clearly says tow away zone. Dave calls me obsessive. My lawyer calls me winnable. Just as I pocketed the phone, the elevator doors slid open. The sound of sharp heels on the epoxy floor echoed like gunshots. A woman marched out. Phone pressed her ear, shouting loud enough to wake the dead. She was wearing a bright red power suit, sunglasses indoors, and radiating an aura of absolute entitlement. Here she was, the Karen of the basement level. Let's call her Lady G-Wagon. She breezed past me as if I were part of the architecture. Just a dirty maintenance worker, not worth a glance. She headed straight for my truck, which was idling temporarily in the lane, and scowled. "Hey, you!" she barked, not even looking at my face. Her eyes glued to her phone screen. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the humid air. "Are you maintenance or delivery? Move that heap of junk. You're blocking my exit." I leaned back against the concrete pillar, crossing my arms. Dust puffed off my sleeves. I looked at her, then at my truck, then back at her, I didn't answer immediately. Silence is a weapon, and I am a marksman. Are you deaf? She lowered her sunglasses, revealing eyes that were perfectly made up and perfectly furious. I said, move that dirty truck. I have a board meeting at 6 p.m., and I do not have time to argue with the help. The help. The phrase landed like a heavy stone. She thought I worked for the building. She thought the F-150 was a work truck. And most importantly, she thought the Mercedes in my spot was parked on her own personal throne. I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was a smile of a man who knows exactly where the trapdoor lever is. Ma'am, I said, my voice low and steady, a stark contrast of her shrill tone. That truck is mine. And more importantly, the spot you're occupying, spot 404, that's mine too. My words hung in the air for about 3 seconds before they actually registered in Lady G-Wagon's brain. She blinked. Once. Twice. The look of dismissal on her face shifted into something new. A mix of surprise and utter disgust. She scanned me from head to toe, her eyes lingering on the mud on my boots, the fraying on my jeans, and the grease smear on my collar. In her world, I wasn't a resident. I was a glitch in the Matrix. Yours. She let out a laugh, a sharp, dry sound devoid of humor. Don't be ridiculous. This is Riverview Heights. The HOA fees alone are probably more than your annual salary. You're telling me you own a unit here and you drive that? She pointed a manicured finger at my truck, like it was a pile of radioactive waste. I own Unit 12B, I replied, keeping my tone flat, and this parking spot is deeded to my unit. You are parking illegally. I'm asking you to move your vehicle immediately so I can park and go upstairs to shower. She clicked her tongue, turning back to her phone. Hold on, Sharon. I'm dealing with a lunatic in the garage. He's having delusions of grandeur. She hung up and pivoted back to me with the expression of a kindergarten teacher scolding a child who just ate paste. Listen. She stepped closer, the wave of perfume hitting me harder. I don't know how you got a key fob to get down here. Maybe you're the plumber or the pool guy, but I am Linda Sterling. My husband sits on the board of the development company that built this place. I can park wherever I want. This spot was empty and it's wide, so I took it. That is how it works when you matter. Now, if you don't want to call security to have you thrown out and that scrap metal towed, get out of my way. Linda Sterling. The name rang a bell. Right? Bob Sterling's wife. Bob was a nouveau riche developer I pulled out of mud pits a few times. He was cheap, always trying to haggle down the recovery fees. Apparently, arrogance was a sexually transmitted disease in that family. I looked Linda dead in the eye. Mrs. Sterling, rules are rules. The sign above your hood says, tow away zone. I'm giving you exactly 2 minutes to move. If you don't, I will exercise my right as a spot owner. Linda's face flushed a deep crimson. She wasn't used to hearing no. She certainly wasn't used to being given orders by a man covered in grime. She whipped out her phone again, fingers flying across the screen. Fine, she hissed. You want to play hardball? I'll show you hardball. I'm calling the building manager. And then, I'm calling a tow truck to drag your piece of junk out of here for blocking traffic. I almost laughed out loud. She was going to call a tow truck? Did she know who held the exclusive towing and parking management contract for the entire Riverview Heights complex? Of course she didn't. People like Linda never read the fine print. They just sign their names and assume the world bends to fit them. Make the call, I said. I walked to the back of my truck, opened the tailgate, and grabbed a bottle of water. I took a slow sip, leaning against the bed, transforming myself into a spectator in my own life. Linda dialed, putting on speaker. Hello? Management? This is Linda Sterling, Penthouse B. There's a strange man, very dirty, harassing me in the B2 garage. He's blocking me in with an old truck and claims he lives here. Send someone down immediately. The voice on the other end sounded frantic. It was Kevin, the weekend manager. I bring him donuts on Saturdays. Mrs. Sterling will send security. But where are you? Spot 404. She screamed. He says it's his. There was a pause on the line. Ah, Mrs. Sterling. Kevin's voice wavered. Spot 404? That is a deeded private spot. The owner is Mr. Mike, Mr. Thompson. He drives a black Ford F-150. Linda froze. She looked at me. She looked at the black truck. The truth had just slapped her across the face, but instead of accepting it, she decided to rewrite reality. He stole that identity. Linda shrieked. He's a scam artist. Kevin, are you stupid? Look at him. He couldn't possibly afford this place. I am ordering you to call the tow company. Get this truck out of my sight. I'll pay for it. Kevin sighed loud enough for the speaker to pick it up. Mrs. Sterling, I really can't. Call them. She cut him off. Or I will have my husband fire you by morning. Call Citywide Towing right now. Citywide Towing. My heart actually skipped a beat from pure amusement. That was my company. The full name on the LLC was Thompson Citywide Towing and Recovery. She was demanding my own employees come and tow their boss. The irony was delicious, better than any steak dinner. I watched Linda, seeing the smug victory in her eyes. She thought she had played the ace. She hung up, crossed her arms, and smirked at me. Hear that, hobo? The tow truck is coming. You're about to lose your ride home. If you get on your knees and apologize right now, maybe I'll tell them to be gentle. I capped my water bottle and tossed it perfectly into a trash can 10 feet away. Mrs. Sterling, I said, my voice soft, dangerous. You just made 2 mistakes. First, you judge a man by his boots. Second, you just called a towing service without checking who owns it. I pulled my second phone out of my pocket, the ruggedized one I use for dispatch. I dialed the direct line to the command center. Linda watched me, confused. Dispatch, go ahead, the voice boomed. It was Barney, my night shift supervisor. Barney, I said, staring right at Linda. Did you just get a call from Riverview Heights Management? Yeah, boss. Some lady named Sterling is screaming bloody murder. Want a Ford F-150 pull from spot 404. Kevin sounded terrified. I was about to call you. That's your truck, isn't it? I chuckled darkly. It is. Listen, Barney. Send a heavy-duty record down here. The flatbed. We have a Mercedes G-Wagon illegally parked in spot 400 for that needs immediate removal. Copy that, boss. ETA 10 minutes. I hung up. Linda's face was beginning to crumble. The confidence was cracking, but her ego was holding the pieces together. Who? Who did you just call? I called the people you want to call, I said, stepping into the light, so she could finally read the embroidered name on my grease-stained chest pocket. Mike Thompson, owner. You wanted a tow truck? You got one, but it's not coming from me. You would think that showing someone a name tag that matches the name of the company they just called would be enough to stop the madness. You would think that logic, like gravity, is a constant force that eventually pulls everyone back down to earth. But I've learned in my line of work that logic doesn't apply to people like Linda Sterling. To her, reality is just an employee she can fire if she doesn't like the report. Linda stared at the embroidery on my chest pocket. Mike Thompson, owner. For a second, I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. But then, her brain did a remarkable frantic gymnastic routine to avoid the truth. She couldn't accept that the man in the dirty boots was the man in charge. If she accepted that, she would have to accept that she was wrong. And Linda Sterling didn't do wrong. She let out a sharp, barking laugh. It echoed off the concrete walls, sounding more like a car alarm than a human emotion. Nice try, she sneered, stepping back and looking me up and down with renewed disgust. You think I'm stupid? You think I was born yesterday? Anyone can buy a patch online. You probably stole that shirt from the real owner's laundry truck. You're not Mike Thompson. Mike Thompson is a businessman. You are a laborer. She said the word labor like it was a diagnosis for a terminal disease. I'm the guy who signs the paychecks, I said, leaning back against my truck, crossing my ankles. And I'm the guy who owns a tow truck that is currently 3 miles out and closing fast. You have about 7 minutes left to move this G-Wagon voluntarily, Mrs. Sterling. After that, it becomes an involuntary recovery. That comes with a hookup fee, a mileage fee, and a storage fee. And I don't offer the neighbor discount. You are threatening me, she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at my face. This is harassment. I am going to make sure you never work in this city again. Do you know who my husband is? Do you have any idea who you are messing with? Here we go. The husband card. It's the standard operating procedure for the suburban tyrant. When their own entitlement fails, they try to borrow someone else's. I know exactly who Bob is, I said calmly. I pulled his Porsche out of a ditch last winter when he tried to drive on summer tires in an ice storm. He cried about the scratch on his rim for 20 minutes. That hit a nerve. Her eyes widened, but she doubled down. She ripped her phone out again and punched the speed dial number. Bob! Bob! Pick up! She screamed into the receiver before the call even connected. She put it on speaker, holding the phone out like a holy relic that would ward off the evil spirits of accountability. What is it, Linda? I'm in a meeting. A male voice boomed from the phone. It was Bob Sterling. All right. I recognized that blustery, impatient baritone anywhere. Bob! There's a man in the garage. A dirty, horrible man. He blocked me in with a truck, and he's threatening to tow my Mercedes. He claims he owns a towing company. He claims he owns spot 404. You need to come down here and destroy him. Bob, destroy him. There was a pause on the line. Spot 404? Bob asked, his voice dropping an octave. Linda, I told you, don't park in the numbered spots if we don't own them. Who is the guy? He says his name is Mike Thompson. Linda yelled, glaring at me triumphantly. He's an imposter. Thompson? Bob's voice hesitated. I could practically hear the gears grinding in his head. He knew the name. He saw my invoices every month for his construction sites. Thompson Citywide Towing handled all his heavy equipment transport. But Bob, like his wife, suffered from a severe case of arrogance-induced blindness. He couldn't reconcile the powerful vendor he relied on with the horrible man his wife was describing. Let me talk to him, Bob commanded. Linda shoved the phone toward my face, smirking. My husband is going to end you. I leaned in toward the phone, not breaking eye contact with her. Hello, Bob. It's Mike, the guy who moved your excavators to the north site last Tuesday. Your wife is parking her G-Wagon in my personal spot. I'm giving her 5 minutes before my flatbed gets here. I suggest you tell her to move. There was a long silence on the other end. This was Bob's chance. This was the moment he could have saved them both. He could have said, "Oh, Mike, I'm so sorry. She didn't know. Put her on." But Bob was a Sterling. And Sterlings don't apologize to guys who wear work boots. Listen here, buddy. Bob's voice turned cold and threatening. I don't care if you move my equipment or not. You don't talk to my wife like that. You're a service provider. You serve us. If you touch that car, I will sue your little company into bankruptcy. I will bury you in so much litigation, you'll be selling that truck for scrap metal to pay your legal fees. Do you understand me? Back off. I felt a cold calm wash over me. It was the same feeling I got right before a cable snapped under tension. You know it's coming, and you know exactly what to do. Okay, Bob, I said softly. Message received. You're declining to de-escalate. I'm declining to take orders from a grease monkey. Bob shouted. Linda, stay there. Don't let him touch the car. I'm calling the chief of police. I'll be down in 10 minutes. The line went dead. Linda looked at me with a smile that was pure, distilled venom. You heard him. You're finished. He's calling the chief of police. He can call the president if he wants, I said, checking my watch. 2 minutes left. That was when the fear truly set in for her. She realized that neither her insults nor her husband's threats had made me flinch. I wasn't moving my truck. I wasn't apologizing. And she could hear something in the distance, the distinctive heavy rumble of a diesel engine echoing down the concrete ramp of the parking garage. It was a sound of inevitable consequences. Panic does strange things to people. It makes them irrational. It makes them desperate. Linda looked at her precious G-Wagon, then at me, then at the ramp. She realized that the tow truck arrived. I was actually going to do it. No, she muttered. No, you don't. You are not taking my car. She threw her Hermes bag onto the concrete floor, a $15,000 bag, tossed aside like trash. Then, in a move that defied both physics and dignity, she hiked up her tight red skirt and scrambled up the front bumper of the Mercedes. What are you doing? I asked, genuinely baffled. I'm stopping you, she screamed, crawling onto the hood of the car. She twisted around and sat squarely on the hood, her heels digging into the pristine white paint, her arms crossed defiantly across her chest. Go ahead. Tow it now. You can't tow it if I'm on it. That's kidnapping. That's manslaughter. That's illegal. It was a sight to behold. A grown woman, dressed in corporate powerwear, perched like a gargoyle on the hood of a luxury SUV in a humid basement, guarding from a threat she had created herself. "Linda," I said, pulling out my phone again to record this masterpiece. "You are denting your own hood, and those heels are scratching the clear coat." "I don't care," she shrieked, her face blotchy with rage and sweat. "This is my property. You have no right. I am a victim here. You are a predator." Just then, the elevator doors pinged open again. Kevin, the building manager, came running out, followed by a bewildered-looking security guard named Stan. Stan was 70 years old and mostly there to make sure the fire doors didn't stick. He was equipped for a hostage situation involving a socialite and an SUV. "Mrs. Sterling." Kevin gasped, stopping dead in his tracks when he saw her on the hood. "Please, get down. This is dangerous." "Arrest him." Linda pointed a shaking finger at me from her perch. "Kevin, arrest this man. He's trying to steal my car." Kevin looked at me, then at my badge, then at the truck. He looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. "Mrs. Sterling, Mike is the authorized towing vendor for the building, and that is his spot. You really need to move." "You're fired too," Linda screamed, spit flying from her mouth. "Everyone is fired. I am not moving. I will sit here all night if I have to. This is a protest. This is a stand against tyranny." I looked at Kevin and shrugged. "I'm not touching her, Kevin, but my truck is here." And there it was. The rumble grew into a roar. The bright yellow strobe lights bounced off the concrete walls, painting the garage in flashes of warning. Around the corner came the beast, my company's flagship wrecker, the Big Bertha. It was a 20-ton flatbed with dual winches and enough torque to pull a locomotive. Driving it was Barney, my head of operations. He backed the massive truck into the lane with surgical precision, the air brakes hissing loudly. PSSSHHHH, as he came to a halt right behind my F-150. The sheer size of the tow truck seemed to shrink the Mercedes. It loomed over the scene like a mechanical judge. Barney hopped out. He was 6'4", built like a vending machine, and wearing a clean uniform. He took one look at me, then looked at the woman sitting on the hood of the G-Wagon. He didn't even blink. He's seen worse. "Evening, boss," Barney said, tipping his cap to me. He ignored Linda completely. "This the unit for removal?" "That's the one, Barney," I said. "Unauthorized parking in a deeded spot. Hostile owner refusing to vacate. And," I pointed to the hood, "we have a live obstruction." Linda scrambled to her knees on the hood, slipping slightly and leaving a long, visible scratch in the paint with her heel. "Don't you come near me," she screamed at Barney. "My husband is calling the police chief. You're all going to jail." Barney looked at me, a bored expression on his face. "Standard procedure for obstruction, boss?" "Standard procedure." I nodded. "We wait for the police to remove the hazard, but keep the engine running. I want her to know we aren't going anywhere." I looked up at Linda, who was now sweating profusely under the garage lights, her perfect hair beginning to frizz, her dignity completely gone. "Make yourself comfortable, Linda," I said, crossing my arms. "The police are on their way, but I don't think they're coming to arrest me." There's a specific kind of silence that falls over a room, or in this case, a concrete basement, when the biggest dog in the yard finally barks. Big Bertha, my company's international Lone Star flatbed, was that dog. She sat there, idling with a deep, rhythmic thrum that vibrated in your chest cavities. Her amber strobe lights washed over the scene. Flash, 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 illuminating Linda Sterling perched on the hood of her Mercedes like a demented hood ornament. Barney stood next to me, holding a clipboard. He didn't look at Linda. He looked at the G-Wagon's tires. "AWD," Barney noted, his voice professional and bored. "Electronic parking brake. We're gonna need the dollies for the rear wheels, boss. Can't drag it without wrecking the transmission. Unless..." He looked at me, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Unless you don't care about the transmission." "We follow the book, Barney," I said, loud enough for the growing audience to hear. "We don't damage property, unlike some people." I gestured to the crowd. The evening rush had officially begun. Elevators were opening, and residents were spilling out, expecting to walk to their cars. Instead, they walked into a circus. People were stopping, Phones were coming out. I saw Mr. Henderson from 4A, a retired judge who hated noise, leaning on his cane and watching with grim fascination. I saw the young couple from 8C whispering and pointing. Linda Sterling had an audience. And for a narcissist, an audience is like oxygen. It fuels a fire, but it also changes the nature of the performance. Linda looked around. She saw the flashing lights. She saw the massive tow truck blocking the lane. She saw the two large men in uniforms standing calmly with clipboards. And she saw her neighbors filming her. The aggression drained out of her face, replaced instantly by something far more dangerous. Calculated fragility. She realized that screaming tyrant wasn't playing well with the crowd. So, like an actress hitting her mark, she switched scripts. Her posture slumped. Her face crumpled. She brought her hands up to her face, covering her eyes, and let out a sob that sounded heartbreakingly real. If you didn't know she'd been threatening to destroy my livelihood 30 seconds ago. Please, she wailed, her voice trembling. Please, just leave me alone. Why are you doing this to me? She looked at the neighbors, extending a shaking hand toward them. Help me. Please, someone help. These men, they cornered me. I'm just a woman all alone down here. They blocked me in, and now they're threatening to take my car. I'm terrified. It was a masterclass in manipulation. The victim card. Mr. Henderson frowned, looking from Linda to me. The young couple looked concerned. A murmur went through the crowd. Is that true? Are they bullying her? Barney shifted uncomfortably. He hated this part. He was a good guy, a family man, and being accused of intimidation didn't sit right with him. Boss, he muttered. She's spinning it. Let her spin, I whispered. Physics doesn't care about tears. I stepped forward, keeping my distance. Exactly 6 feet, visible on camera. Mrs. Sterling, nobody is threatening you. You are parked in a private spot. You refuse to move. We are simply waiting for the police to arrive, so we can safely remove the vehicle. You are free to step down and walk away at any time. He lunged at me. Linda shrieked, pointing at me. He tried to pull me off the car. Look at my arm. She rubbed a spot on her arm that was perfectly unblemished. He grabbed me. That's assault. I'm only sitting up here because I'm afraid he'll hurt me if I get down. The murmur in the crowd grew louder. This was a serious accusation. In the court of public opinion, a crying woman in a red dress usually beats a dirty man in work boots. I saw Kevin, the building manager, stepping forward nervously. Actually, I've been here the whole time. Mike didn't touch her. Shut up, Kevin. Linda snapped, momentarily breaking character before diving back into tears. You're in on it. It's a conspiracy against my family. She turned her tear-stained face to the camera of the nearest bystander. My name is Linda Sterling. My husband is Bob Sterling. I am being held hostage in the Riverview garage by a rogue towing company. They are demanding money. They are threatening physical violence. Please, if anyone sees this, send help. It was almost impressive. She was live-streaming her own delusion. But then, the sound of sirens cut through the garage, bouncing off the low ceilings. Whoop whoop. Blue lights mixed with the amber strobes of my tow truck. A police cruiser rolled down the ramp, followed closely by a sleek black Porsche Cayenne. Thank God. Linda cried out, sliding off the hood of the Mercedes. She didn't look terrified anymore. She looked vindicated. Bob is here. And the police. Now you're done. Now you are all done. The Porsche screeched to a halt behind a police car. The door flew open, and out stepped Bob Sterling. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my first house, but it was straining at the buttons. His face was red, his tie was loose, and he looked ready to kill. He didn't look at the situation. He didn't look at the parking lines. He looked at his crying wife, and then he looked at me. Who is he? Bob roared, marching toward me. Which one of you lowlives touched my wife? 2 police officers stepped out of their cruiser. One was a younger officer, looking tense. The other was Sergeant Miller, an older guy with gray hair and a mustache that had seen all. I knew Miller. We'd worked accident scenes together for 10 years. He knew I didn't cut corners. Back up, sir, Sergeant Miller said, holding up a hand toward Bob. Everyone take a step back. Bob ignored him, getting right in my face. I could smell the scotch on his breath from his business meeting. You're dead, Bob hissed, poking a finger into my chest. You touched her, I'm gonna have you arrested for assault, and then I'm gonna sue you for emotional distress. I will own your little truck. I will own your house. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I looked down at his finger on my chest. Sir, I said, my voice calm enough to freeze water. You are touching me. That is battery. I suggest you remove your finger. Or what? Bob sneered. You'll tow me too? Sir. Sergeant Miller's voice cracked like a whip. Step away from the other man. Now! Bob stepped back, adjusting his jacket, sneering. Officer, I want this man arrested. He assaulted my wife. She's terrified. Look at her. Linda ran to Bob, burying her face in his shoulder, sobbing loudly. He was horrible, Bob. He said he owned the spot. He said he was going to drag me out of the car. He grabbed my arm. Sergeant Miller looked at me. He didn't smile, but his eyes were steady. Mike, that true? Negative, Sergeant, I said. I arrived home at 5:30, found the vehicle in my deeded spot, requested removal. Driver refused. Driver climbed onto the vehicle to obstruct recovery. I maintained distance. I have not made physical contact. Liar. Linda screamed from Bob's shoulder. It's his word against mine. And I am a sterling. Actually, I said, reaching into my pocket, it's not your word against mine. I pulled out my phone. I have video of the entire interaction, I said. From the moment she refused to move, to the moment she climbed on the hood, to the moment she accused me of assault while I was standing 10 feet away. I pointed up at the ceiling. And so, does the building security camera directly above us. I pointed at the dashboard of Big Bertha. And so does a 360-degree dash cam on my heavy wrecker. I pointed to the crowd of neighbors. And so do about 12 witnesses who've been filming for the last 5 minutes. I looked at Bob. The color was starting to drain from his face. He was a bully, but he wasn't stupid. He knew what cameras meant. Would you like to review the tape before you file that false police report, Bob? I asked, because filing a false report is a crime. And I think Sergeant Miller has had a long day. The silence returned. But this time, it wasn't the silence of anticipation. It was the silence of a trap, snapping shut. Bob looked at Linda. Linda stopped crying instantly, her eyes darting around, looking for an exit that didn't exist. Bob, she whispered. Bob looked at the tow truck. He looked at the name on the door, Thompson Citywide Towing. He looked at me, and for the first time, he really saw me. Not the grease, not the boots. He saw the man who controlled the logistics for 3 of his downtown construction sites. Thompson, Bob muttered, the realization hitting him like a brick to the face. You're that Thompson? The one and only, I said. And Bob, your wife is sitting on my hood. There's a specific look a man gets when he realizes he has just tried to mug the person who signs his paychecks. It's a mix of nausea, confusion, and the frantic mental arithmetic of calculating exactly how much money he is about to lose. Bob Sterling was wearing that look. He stared at me, then at the massive yellow logo on the side of Big Bertha, Thompson Citywide Towing. Then he looked back at me, the dirty laborer. Filter fell away from his eyes, and he finally recognized the face he'd seen across a boardroom table 6 months ago during contract negotiations for the West Side Mall project. Mike, Bob stammered, his voice losing all its booming authority. I didn't know it was you. I mean, the boots, the truck. I work for a living, Bob, I said, keeping my voice flat. Someone has to clear the sites so you can build on them. Bob swallowed hard. He turned to his wife, who was still clinging to his arm, waiting for him to destroy me. Linda, he snapped, his tone shifting from protector to annoyed husband. Get off the car. Now. Linda blinked, stunned. What? Bob, did you hear me? He assaulted me. He's stealing my car. He's not stealing anything, Linda. Bob hissed, tried to keep his voice down so the neighbors wouldn't hear, though it was far too late for that. Do you know who this is? This is the guy who handles the heavy logistics for the entire downtown expansion. If he pulls his fleet, we're dead in the water. Get off the damn hood. Linda recoiled as if slapped. The betrayal was absolute. Her champion had defected. Sergeant Miller stepped into the awkward silence. Mr. Thompson, he said, nodding at me, You mentioned a video? Right here, Sergeant. I unlocked my phone and handed it over. Miller watched the screen. He watched Linda refuse to move. He watched her climb onto the hood. He watched her fake the tears. He watched me standing 10 feet away, arms crossed, drinking water. He watched the whole performance. Miller handed the phone back to me and turned to Linda. His face was stern, the kind of look that makes teenagers spit out their gum. Mrs. Sterling, Miller said, do you still want to file a report for assault? Linda opened her mouth, looked at the video playing on my screen, looked at the silent crowd of neighbors recording her, and closed her mouth. She knew she was cornered. If she said yes, she was committing a crime. I was scared, she muttered, looking at the ground. Maybe I misremembered. You misremembered climbing onto a car and screaming for help? Miller raised an eyebrow. That's a hell of a memory lapse. I'm going to give you a break, ma'am, because I don't want to do the paperwork tonight. But if you waste police resources again with a false accusation, you'll be leaving this garage in the back of my car. Do we understand each other? Linda nodded, humiliated. She shrank back, trying to hide behind Bob. Okay, Bob said, wiping sweat from his forehead with a silk handkerchief. He forced a tight, fake smile. Okay, misunderstanding. All a big misunderstanding. Mike, look, we're sorry. Linda is passionate. She's had a long day. He pulled a set of keys from his pocket. I'll just move the G-Wagon now. We'll park it in our own spot upstairs. No harm, no foul, right? Just business partners having a little spat. He reached for the door handle of the Mercedes. Don't touch it, Bob, I said. Bob froze. Excuse me? The car isn't going upstairs, I said. It's going to the impound lot. Bob laughed nervously. Come on, Mike. Don't be like that. You prove your point. You won. I'm moving the car right now. You can park your truck. We're good. We're not good, I said. I walked over to Barney and took the clipboard from him. See, Bob, usually you'd be right. Usually, if the owner returns before the hookup is complete, they can pay a drop fee and move the vehicle. That's the standard city ordinance. I flipped a page on the clipboard. However, I continued, tapping the paper. We are on private property, Riverview Heights, and this building operates under a very specific set of HOA bylaws regarding parking enforcement. Bylaws that your development company wrote. Bob went pale. He knew exactly what I was talking about. Article 14, Section C, Paragraph 2. I recited from memory. In the event of a vehicle blocking a deeded spot owned by another resident, if the vehicle owner engages in aggressive behavior, obstruction of removal, or harassment of the deeded owner, the drop fee option is waived. The vehicle is subject to immediate mandatory impoundment to ensure the safety of the community. I looked at Bob. You put that clause in there to keep the college kids from partying in the guest spots, remember? You want to make sure we could tow them instantly if they gave security a hard time. I gestured to Linda, who was now looking at me with pure horror. Your wife just gave a masterclass in aggressive behavior and obstruction, I said. She sat on the hood. She screamed. She accused a resident of assault. Under the rules you wrote, Bob, I am legally prohibited from releasing this vehicle to you. It has to go to the yard. You can't be serious, Bob whispered. That's a $160,000 car, and it will be very safe in my lot, I said. Once you pay the towing fee, the storage fee, the administrative fee, and the, hazard pay for my driver having to deal with a hostile environment. Barney stepped forward, chains clanking in his hands. He looked at Bob. Step away from the vehicle, sir, unless you want to ride in it. Bob looked at the tow truck. He looked at the police officer, who was leaning against a pillar, clearly enjoying the show. He looked at the clause in his own contract that was now eating him alive. He knew he was beaten. If he fought this, he'd be violating the very contract his company enforced on everyone else. It would be a PR nightmare. Bob stepped back. He looked at Linda with eyes that promised a very, very long conversation later that night. Fine, Bob spat, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. Tow it. Take the damn car. Thank you, Bob, I said politely. I turned to Barney. Hook it up. 4-point tie down. Don't scratch the rims. Barney grinned. You got it, boss. As the hydraulics whined and the bed of the massive tow truck began to slide back, tilting down toward the Mercedes, I saw Linda bury her face in her hands. The crowd of neighbors was still watching, silent and awestruck. They were witnessing the impossible. A Karen losing, not just socially, but legally, bound by the very red tape she usually used to strangle others. But I wasn't done. Taking a car was a battle. I was about to win the war. Oh, and Bob. I called out over the sound of the winch cables extending. He turned, his face purple. What? Check your email in the morning. I said, we need to talk about the renewal of the logistics contract for the downtown project. I'm afraid my rates just went up considerably. There's a unique sound that a winch cable makes when it takes up slack. It's a metallic snap hiss followed by a low mechanical groan. To most people, it's just noise. To me, it's the sound of physics taking charge. It's the sound of an object, no matter how expensive or entitled, surrendering to a force greater than itself. Barney was a virtuoso with the controls. He stood by the side of the flatbed, operating the levers with the gentle touch of a pianist. The hydraulic bed of Big Bertha slid backward and tilted down, the metal edge scraping the concrete floor with a spark. Scrape, clank, whir. Barney pulled the heavy chains and the soft-strap wheel harnesses from the toolbox. He walked around the Mercedes G-Wagon like a predator circling its prey. He didn't rush. He checked his angles. He knelt down to secure the straps around the massive alloy wheels, ensuring, as per my instructions, that not a single scratch would mar the rims. We are professionals, after all. Linda watched this happen with the look of someone watching a slow-motion car crash. Her hands were pressed over her mouth. Her eyes were wide and wet. Every time the chain rattled, she flinched as if the metal were hitting her own skin. Careful, she yelped as Barney tightened the ratchet strap. That's custom paint. That's pearl white magno. You're hurting it. Barney didn't look up. He gave the strap a final decisive click-click to lock in place. Secure, he muttered to himself. Then, the winch motor kicked into high gear. The cable went taut. The G-Wagon suspension compressed. The heavy SUV bowing down in submission before being dragged forward. Creak, pop. The tires rotated slowly as the car was pulled up the incline of the flatbed. It looked ridiculous. This symbol of suburban wealth. This tank designed for off-road adventures it would never see, being dragged backward up a yellow ramp like a misbehaving child being dragged out of a toy store. Bob Sterling stood next to his wife, but he wasn't looking at the car. He was looking at me. His mind was clearly racing, calculating the fallout. He was watching his leverage evaporate in real time. Mike, Bob said, stepping closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. He tried to put a hand on my shoulder, but I shifted slightly, leaving his hand hovering in the air. Mike, look, about the contract. Let's not make rash decisions based on emotional events. We have a long history. The downtown project relies on your fleet. I watched the Mercedes crest the top of the ramp. It's not emotional, Bob. It's risk assessment. I turned to face him fully. You see, my insurance premiums are based on the predictability of my clients. If I'm working with a developer whose family members create hazardous environments, obstruct safety vehicles, and file false police reports, well, that's a liability. Liabilities cost money. Bob wiped his forehead. We can fix this. I'll talk to her. She won't come near the sites. She won't come near you. Just don't kill the contract, Mike. We're talking about a 6-month delay if I have to find a new vendor. You know there's nobody else with your capacity. He was right. I had the biggest fleet in the city. If I walked, his construction sites would turn into parking lots for idle heavy machinery. He needed me, and 10 minutes ago, he had threatened to bury me. We could discuss the terms on Monday. I said coldly, my lawyers will draft a new proposal. It will include a nuisance clause and a significant hike in the retainer fee. You can sign it, or you can start calling around to see if Joe's Towing has enough trucks to move your cranes. Spoiler alert, he doesn't. Bob's jaw tightened. He looked at the tow truck, then at his wife. He realized he was going to have to pay a stupid tax in the millions of dollars, all because Linda couldn't walk an extra 50 feet from a guest spot. Fine, Bob hissed. Send the paperwork. At that moment, the G-Wagon reached its final resting place on the back of the truck. Barney leveled the bed out. The Mercedes was now perched 5 feet in the air, displayed like a trophy. Barney locked the safety pins and gave the truck 2 firm pats on the fender. Loaded and locked, boss, Barney called out. ready for transport. "Take it away, Barney," I said. "Impound Lot B, the one with the extra security fees." Barney climbed into the cab of Big Bertha. The air brakes released with a sharp PSH. The massive diesel engine roared, and the truck began to move. As the Mercedes rolled away, Linda let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. She ran a few steps after the truck, her heels clicking frantically on the concrete, reaching out as if she could grab the bumper and pull it back. "My car," she wailed. "Where are you taking it? Bob, do something. Stop him." Bob didn't move. He just stared at the taillights of the tow truck disappearing up the ramp. The red glow of the taillights reflected on his sweaty face. He looked defeated. He looked tired. "It's gone, Linda," Bob said, his voice flat. "It's gone because you wouldn't listen." He turned and walked toward the elevator, loosening his tie. He didn't wait for her. He didn't offer her his arm. He pressed the call button and stared at the numbers, refusing to make eye contact with the neighbors who were still watching. Linda stood alone in the middle of the driving lane. The empty space where her car used to be felt massive. She looked at the neighbors, who were now putting their phones away. The show was over. The spell was broken. She wasn't the victim. She was just a woman standing in a garage. Sans Mercedes, sans dignity. She looked at me one last time. There was no fire left in her eyes. Just a hollow, confused shock. She couldn't understand how the world had flipped upside down so quickly. "You're a monster," she whispered, though it lacked any real conviction. "I'm a resident," I corrected, "and I'm tired." She turned and hurried after her husband, squeezing into the elevator just as the doors were closing. I saw Bob refuse to look at her as the metal doors slid shut, sealing them in their own private box of misery. The garage fell silent. The hum of the ventilation fans returned. The audience of neighbors dispersed, giving me little nods of approval as they walked to their cars. Mr. Henderson, the retired judge, stopped by on his way to his Buick. "Good show, young man," he grumbled, tapping his cane on the floor. "Order must be maintained. She's been parking in the handicap loading zone for months. Glad someone finally taught her the law." "Just doing my job, Mr. Henderson," I said. "Well done," he nodded and shuffled away. I was finally alone. I walked back to my truck. My trusty Ford F-150. It was dirty, it was old, and it smelled like diesel and hard work. I climbed into the driver's seat. It felt like a throne. I put the truck in gear and eased it forward. I turned the wheel, lining up the back tires with the white lines of Spot 404. I checked my mirrors. The angle was perfect. I reversed. The truck glided backward, the tires crunching softly on the concrete. I watched the rear bumper approach the rubber guard on the wall. I stopped with 6 inches to spare. Perfect. I shifted into park. I turned off the engine. The silence that followed was the most beautiful sound I had heard all day. I stepped out of the truck and locked it. I walked around to the front and patted the hood. It was parked exactly where it belonged, in the center, between the lines, under the sign that bore my name. I looked at the empty space where the Mercedes had been. I looked at the oil stain it had left behind, a small, dark blemish on my otherwise clean spot. I'd have to scrub that tomorrow. But for tonight, it was a battle scar, a reminder of the victory. I grabbed my bag from the passenger seat and headed for the elevator. My boots felt lighter. The grease on my shirt didn't feel so dirty anymore. It felt like armor. I pressed the button for the 12th floor. As the elevator rose, lifting me away from the heat and the noise of the garage, I had pulled out my phone and texted Dave. "Me, you were right. Being the boss has its perks." "Dave, did you tow it?" "Me. Hook, line, and sinker. Also, I think I just paid for my new boat." I leaned my head back against the elevator wall and closed my eyes. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a deep, savory satisfaction. I wasn't asking for the moon. I wasn't asking for a parade. I just wanted my spot. And God help the next person who tried to take it. But the story wasn't over. I knew people like Linda and Bob. They don't just go away. They regroup. They lawyer up. They try to find a back door. Bob had accepted defeat in the garage. But the Sterlings were the type to try and win the peace after losing the war. When I walked into my apartment, tossed my keys on the counter, and cracked open a cold beer, my phone buzzed. An email notification. It wasn't from Bob. It was from the Riverview Heights HOA Board of Directors. Subject: Emergency meeting notice regarding incident in Garage B2. I smiled. They were moving fast. Linda had probably called the board president from the elevator. She was going to try to spin this, try to change the rules, try to use her husband's influence to get me evicted or my contract voided. She didn't know that I had read the bylaws better than the people who wrote them. She didn't know that I had the footage. And she certainly didn't know that half the board members owed me favors for pulling their teenage kids' cars out of ditches at 3 a.m. without telling their parents. I took a sip of beer. The cold liquid washed away the dust of the day. "Bring it on," I whispered to the empty room. The battle of the garage was over. The war for the building was just beginning, and I had a full tank of gas. Morning comes early in the towing business. By 6 a.m., I was already at the impound lot, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over the chain-link fences. Impound Lot B is a fortress. High walls, razor wire, and Rottweilers that take their job very seriously. In the corner, under the harsh glare of the security lights that were just flickering off, sat the white Mercedes G-Wagon. It looked out of place among the beat-up sedans and impounded delivery trucks. It looked like a diamond sitting in a coal bin. I walked over to the intake booth. Old man Jerry was working the window. "Morning, boss," Jerry grunted, sliding a clipboard toward me. "That G-Wagon generated some calls last night." "I bet it did," I said, scanning the log. "Guy named Bob called 4 times. Threatened to sue me, then offered me $500 cash to open a gate, then threatened to sue me again. I told him to call the main office during business hours." Jerry chuckled. He didn't like that. "Good man, Jerry." I looked at the fee structure. Towing, $250. Mileage, $75. After hours intake, $100. Hazardous hookup, obstruction, $300. Overnight storage, $120. Total so far, $845. And the clock was ticking. Every hour it sat there, the meter ran. For a guy like Bob Sterling, $845 was lunch money. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the inconvenience. It was about the fact that his wife's status symbol was currently sitting next to a rust bucket Corolla that had been involved in a bank robbery. I left the lot and drove to the Riverview Heights complex. The emergency HOA meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. in the community lounge. I didn't wear my work boots this time. I showered, shaved, and put on a pair of dark jeans, a crisp white button-down, and a blazer. I wanted to look less like a grease monkey and more like what I actually was, a business owner who manages a multi-million-dollar fleet. When I walked into the lounge, the atmosphere was tight enough to snap a winch cable. The board members sat at a long mahogany table. Bob Sterling was there, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. His eyes were bloodshot, and he was furiously typing on his BlackBerry. And there was Linda. She was wearing sunglasses inside again, nursing a latte like it was life support. When she saw me walk in, she stiffened. She whispered something to Bob, who didn't even look up. "Mr. Thompson," said Brenda, the board president. Brenda was a tough-as-nails retired school principal who ran the building like a naval ship. "Please take a seat." I sat opposite the Sterlings. The distance between us was only 4 feet of polished wood, but it felt like a canyon. "We are here," Brenda began, peering over her reading glasses, "to discuss the incident in Garage B2 last night. Mrs. Sterling has filed a formal complaint alleging harassment, intimidation, and theft of property by Mr. Thompson." Linda took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were puffy, clearly staged for maximum sympathy. "He humiliated me," she said, her voice trembling. "He blocked me in. He had his men surround me. It was terrifying. I don't feel safe in my own home, knowing he has access to the building." She looked at the board members, pleading. "I want his parking privileges revoked. I want his contract with the building terminated. And I want him evicted for creating a hostile living environment." Bob finally looked up. He looked at me, then at Linda. He stayed silent. He was hoping his wife could win this skirmish, so he wouldn't have to fight the war. Brenda turned to me. "Mr. Thompson, your response." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't get angry. I opened a manila folder I had brought with me and slid 3 sheets of paper across the table. "Mrs. Sterling claims I created a hostile environment," I said calmly. "However, the hostility seems to be a pattern on her part." Brenda picked up the first paper. "What is this?" "That I said, is a log of parking violations committed by the white Mercedes G-Wagon in the last 6 months. 17 violations. Blocking the fire hydrant on March 3rd. Parking in the handicap loading zone without a placard on April 12th, 14th, and 20th. Blocking the delivery bay on May 5th. I pointed to the second paper. And this is a compilation of complaints from the concierge staff. Mrs. Sterling has been reported for verbally abusing the valet, the cleaning crew, and the night security guard on multiple occasions. I leaned forward. And finally, the third document. That is a copy of the email Bob Sterling's construction firm sent to my company last year, outlining the zero-tolerance policy for obstruction of service vehicles. A policy I enforced last night. Linda turned purple. You were stalking me? You kept records? I run the parking management for this building. Linda, I said, I don't stalk. I audit, and you are a liability. I turned to Brenda. The incident last night wasn't harassment. It was enforcement. Mrs. Sterling parked in a deeded private spot. She refused to move. She climbed onto her vehicle to physically obstruct a licensed tow operator. That created a massive insurance risk for the HOA. If she had slipped and fallen, she would have sued the building. I removed the hazard. I saved the HOA from a lawsuit. Brenda looked at the documents. She looked at the other board members. They were nodding. They knew Linda. Everyone knew Linda. They just hadn't had the ammunition to stop her until now. This is ridiculous. Linda slammed her hand on the table. Bob, say something. Are you going to let him talk to me like this? He's a mechanic. Bob winced. He looked at me. He saw the look in my eyes. The look that said, check your email. Bob pulled out his phone. He refreshed his inbox. I saw his face go slack. He had just received the notification from my office. Notice of contract termination. Thompson Citywide Towing will cease all logistic support for Sterling Development effective in 30 days due to breach of conduct clauses. Bob knew what that meant. It meant his cranes wouldn't move. His excavators would sit idle. His timelines would crumble. The delay would cost him millions in late penalties. Linda, Bob said, his voice barely a whisper. What? She snapped. Shut up. The room went dead silent. Linda looked at her husband as if he had just slapped her. Excuse me? Bob stood up. He was shaking. I said, shut up. You parked in a spot. You caused a scene. You lied to the police. And now, he waved his phone in the air. Now you've cost me the logistics contract for the downtown tower. He turned to the board. We withdraw the complaint. Bob. Linda shrieked. We withdraw the complaint. Bob roared, slamming his fist on the table. And we will pay any fines associated with the incident. Mr. Thompson acted within his rights. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Mike, please, can we talk outside? About the email? I stood up, buttoning my blazer. I don't discuss business during HOA meetings, Bob. Have your people call my people on Monday. But I'll be honest, my schedule is filling up fast. You might want to start looking for another vendor. I looked at Linda. She was shrunk into a chair, small and defeated. Her power play had failed. Her husband had turned on her. The board was looking at her with open disdain. Have a nice day, I said to the room. I have a truck to wash. I walked out of the lounge. I didn't slam the door. I closed it gently. As I walked down the hallway, I could hear the muffled sound of Bob and Linda screaming at each other behind the heavy oak doors. It was a messy, ugly sound. I took the elevator down to the lobby. Kevin, the manager, was at the desk. He looked at me with wide eyes. Everything okay, Mr. Thompson? He asked. Everything is great, Kevin, I said. By the way, keep an eye on spot 404. If anyone touches it, you have my permission to call the heavy wrecker immediately. Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir. I walked out into the sunshine. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't email. It was a text from Dave. Dave, dude, have you seen TikTok? Me, no. Why? Dave, send you a link. It has 2 million views in 4 hours. You're famous. I clicked the link. The video opened. It was shot from a balcony above the garage entrance. It showed Linda perched on the hood of her white Mercedes, screaming like a banshee, while my massive yellow tow truck idled patiently in the background. The caption read, #Karen of the Year versus #RepoBoss. Guess who wins? Tractor dashing away. I scrolled through the comments. User 123. OMG, I love how calm the truck guy is. Truck life. That hookup was clean. No scratches. Pro moves. Justice served. Did she really say, do you know who my husband is? Classic. Eat the rich. Watching that G-Wagon get dragged away is the therapy I needed today. I laughed. A deep belly laugh that startled a pigeon on the sidewalk. Linda thought the meeting was the end of it. She thought withdrawing complaint would make it go away. She didn't realize that while she was fighting me in the boardroom, the internet was already judging her in the court of public opinion. And the internet is a much harsher judge than Brenda. I put my phone in my pocket and walked toward my truck. I had a business to run. I had contracts to rewrite. And somewhere in a lonely impound lot, a white Mercedes was waiting for its owner to come and pay the price of arrogance. But I had a feeling Bob wouldn't be picking it up anytime soon. He had bigger problems to fix. The war was over, but the viral cleanup, that was just getting started. If there's one thing I have learned about narcissists, it is that they cannot stand a vacuum. Silence terrifies them. When they are wrong, when they are cornered, and when the world goes quiet to wait for their apology, they don't apologize. They double down. They try to fill the silence with noise, hoping that if they scream loud enough, the truth will get drowned out. For 48 hours after the HOA meeting, I stayed silent. I went to work. I managed my fleet. I let the viral video of Linda on the hood circulate naturally. But Linda Sterling couldn't handle the silence. She couldn't handle being the villain in a 15-second TikTok clip. She needed to control the narrative. She needed to be the victim. It was Wednesday afternoon when Dave burst into my office, holding his tablet like it was a bomb about to detonate. Mike, Dave said, breathless, you need to see this. She posted a video. My truth video. I sighed, putting down my coffee. Of course she did. Dave placed the tablet on my desk. There was Linda, sitting in what looked like a professionally lit living room. She was wearing a soft, beige cardigan, the universal uniform of the I'm sorry video, but she wasn't apologizing. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her makeup artfully smudged. I hit play. Hi everyone. Linda's voice quivered on the screen. I know a lot of you have seen a video of me recently. A video that was taken out of context. A video that was edited to make me look like a crazy person. She took a deep, shaky breath. What you didn't see, she continued, wiping a tear, was the 20 minutes of harassment before that camera started rolling. This man, this tow truck driver, he followed me. He called me horrible names. He used slurs that I won't repeat here. He threatened my physical safety. I climbed onto my car because I was terrified. I was trying to get away from a predator. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. This wasn't just spin. This was defamation. She was accusing me of hate speech and predatory behavior. He's a wealthy business owner who masquerades as a working-class man to trap women, Linda said, staring into the camera lens with chilling conviction. He used his truck to intimidate me. And now, he's using his power to silence me. But I won't be silent. I am a victim of misogynistic bullying. Please share this. Help me get justice. The video ended. It has 50,000 likes, Dave said quietly. The comments, Mike, they're getting ugly. People are doxing the business address. Someone just left a 1-star review saying you hate women. I leaned back in my chair. I looked at the screen. Linda had made a fatal error. She had assumed that because I was silent, I was defenseless. She assumed that the only footage that existed was the shaky cell phone video from the balcony. She had forgotten about Big Bertha. Get the legal team on the line, I said to Dave, and tell Barney to pull the hard drive from the wrecker's DVR. You going to issue a statement? Dave asked. No, I said. Statements are for politicians. We deal in evidence. 2 hours later, my lawyer, a shark named Saul who enjoyed litigation more than he enjoyed golf, sat in my office. He watched Linda's video. Then he watched the raw footage from my truck's 360-degree 4K camera system. Saul smiled. It was a terrifying smile. Mike, he said, this is what we in the legal profession call a slam dunk. She is accusing you of specific acts, slurs, physical threats that are demonstrably disproven by this audio. What's the move, Saul? Defamation per se, Saul said, cracking his knuckles. But the court of law takes years. You need to win the court of public opinion by dinner time. We didn't write a long, emotional post. We didn't ask for sympathy. I simply logged into the official Thompson Citywide towing social media account. I uploaded a single file. The caption was short, regarding the allegations by Mrs. Sterling. The truth has audio. The video was raw. No music. No cuts. It started with a timestamp, Tuesday, 5:32 p.m. It showed me walking up to the G-Wagon. The audio from my chest pocket camera, standard issue for all my drivers for liability reasons, was crystal clear. Me, ma'am, that truck is mine. And more importantly, the spot you're occupying, spot 404, that's mine too. Linda, don't be ridiculous. You're blocking my exit. I do not have time to argue with the help. The internet heard her call me the help. They heard her call my truck a heap of junk. They heard her threaten to have me fired. Then, the video cut to the harassment she claimed happened. Me, standing 10 feet away, drinking water. I called the people you want to call. You wanted a tow truck? You got one. There were no slurs. There was no aggression. Just a man calmly drinking water, while a woman screamed entitlement. Then came the kill shot, the footage from the police interaction. Linda, on the hood, he grabbed me. That's assault. Look at my arm. Sergeant Miller, Mike? That true. Me? Negative. Maintain distance. Linda, liar. It's his word against mine. And finally, the clip of her scratching her own paint with her heels while trying to climb the bumper, followed by her screaming at Barney that he scratched it. I hit post. The reaction was instantaneous. The internet loves a villain, but they love exposing a liar even more. The tide turned so fast it gave the entire city whiplash. Within an hour, the hashtags changed. Hashtag Justice for Linda died a quick death, replaced by hashtag Wagon Karen, hashtag receipts, and hashtag Liar Linda. Video essayists on YouTube started breaking down her apology video frame by frame, analyzing her fake tears versus the raw footage of her screaming at a police officer. Then the awesome open source intelligence community got involved. These are the internet detectives you never want to cross. They found her old posts. They found a video from 3 years ago where she screamed at a barista for putting foam on her latte. They found her reviews of local businesses where she threatened to destroy them for minor inconveniences. Linda didn't just lose the argument. She became the face of entitlement for the entire English-speaking world. At 8 p.m., my phone rang. It wasn't the media. It was Bob Sterling. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. And again. On the fourth ring, I picked up, "This is Mike." "Mike, please." Bob's voice was unrecognizable. He sounded broken. "You have to take the video down. Please. We're getting death threats. The news vans are parked on my lawn. My partners, Mike, my investors are pulling out. They're saying the Sterling brand is toxic. I didn't post a video to hurt you, Bob." I said, leaning back in my chair, watching the view count tick past 1 million. "I posted it to clear my name. Your wife accused me of being a sexual predator and a bigot. She tried to ruin my life because she didn't want to walk 50 feet. I know she's crazy," Bob stammered. "I'm leaving her, Mike. I'm filing for divorce. I moved into a hotel tonight. I'm done. Just, please, issue a statement accepting the apology. Help me stop the bleeding. I'll lose the company if this continues." I thought about it. I thought about the years Bob had nickel and dime me on contracts. I thought about how he stood there and let his wife scream at me until he realized he needed my trucks. "Bob," I said, "you stood there and watched her lie to the police. You only tried to stop her when you realized I was the one with the leverage. You're not a victim here. You're an accomplice." "Mike." "The video stays up," I said. "It stays up as a record. Because if I take it down, she'll spin it again. She'll say I settled. She'll say she won. The truth remains public." "You're destroying us," Bob whispered. "No, Bob," I said, looking at the frozen image of Linda sitting on the hood of her car, pointing a finger at the world. "You guys did a great job of that all by yourselves. I just turned the lights on." I hung up the phone. My computer pinged. A new email from my lawyer. "Saul. Subject. Defamation suit filed. Message. Papers served to Linda Sterling at 7:45 p.m. We are asking for damages, legal fees, and a public retraction. Also, the local news want an interview tomorrow morning. Do you want to do it? I typed back, no interviews. Let the video speak. But tell them the tow truck is available for photo ops if they want. I walked the window of my office. The city lights were twinkling below. Somewhere out there in a hotel room, Bob Sterling was realizing that his empire was built on sand. And somewhere in a lonely penthouse, Linda Sterling was learning the hardest lesson of the digital age. You can be rich, you can be loud, but you can never, ever fight a man who has 4K video and nothing to hide. The court of public opinion had reached a verdict. Guilty on all counts. Now, it was time for the actual judge to have his say. The wheels of justice turn slowly, but when they finally crush you, they grind you into fine powder. 3 months had passed since the night in the garage. The internet had mostly moved on to the next villain of the week, but the legal system doesn't forget. While the hashtags faded, the court dates remained. We met in a conference room on the 40th floor of a downtown high-rise. It was a settlement conference, a polite term for a room where expensive lawyers bludgeon each other with paperwork until one side bleeds out. On one side of the long glass table sat me and Saul, my attorney. Saul looked like he had just eaten a heavy meal and was ready for dessert. He had arranged our evidence in neat, color-coded binders, video logs, financial damages, defamation metrics, and HOA violations. On the other side sat Linda Sterling. She looked diminished. The bright red power suit was gone, replaced by a modest gray dress. Her hair was pulled back severely. She looked 10 years older. There was no Hermes bag on the table, just a bottle of water and a trembling hand. Next to her was her lawyer, a man named Mr. Wexler, who looked exhausted. And at the far end of the table, sitting as far away from Linda as physically possible, was Bob Sterling. He was there because his name was on the assets, but his body language screamed stranger. "Let's not waste time," Saul said, opening a binder. "We are here to discuss the defamation suit filed by Mr. Thompson against Mrs. Sterling. We are alleging libel, slander, tortious interference with business contracts, and malicious prosecution." Wexler sighed, rubbing his temples. "We are prepared to offer a written apology and a settlement of $50,000 to make this go away." Saul laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound. 50,000? Mr. Wexler, you're joking. The contract cancellation from Sterling Development alone cost my client's company $4 million in projected revenue over 3 years. The reputational damage from Mrs. Sterling's video, which, I remind you, accused my client of being a sexual predator, is incalculable. Saul slid a piece of paper across the table. "We aren't looking for 50 grand. We are looking for punitive damages. We are looking at 7 figures. Linda gasped. "I don't have that kind of money." "Bob, tell them." She turned to her husband. Bob didn't look at her. He looked at the view of the city skyline. "Bob isn't paying this, Linda." Bob's lawyer interrupted smoothly. "As per the prenuptial agreement and the pending divorce filing, Mr. Sterling is not liable for intentional torts or criminal acts committed by his spouse. Defamation is an intentional tort. You're on your own." The color drained from Linda's face. It was the first time she truly understood her position. She wasn't protected by the Sterling umbrella anymore. She was standing in the rain, and she had burned her own raincoat. But it was just a video," she stammered, looking at me. "Mike, Mr. Thompson, please." I was emotional. I took it down. Can't you just let it go? You're a successful man. You don't need my money." I looked at her. I thought about the look in her eyes when she sat on the hood of her car. I thought about the smugness when she threatened to have me fired. I thought about the fear in my mother's voice when she called me after seeing the Predator video online. "It's not about the money, Linda," I said quietly. "It's about the audit." "The what?" "The audit of your actions," I said. "You spent your whole life thinking you could treat people like garbage because you could afford the cleanup. But you can't afford this cleanup." Saul took over. "Here's the deal. We are willing to drop the lawsuit and settle today, avoiding a public trial that would permanently destroy any shred of reputation you have left. But our terms are non-negotiable." He slid a document toward her. "Condition 1. A video apology, scripted by us, posted to all your social media channels and pinned for 1 year. No tears, no, my truth, just an admission of lying. Linda nodded weakly. She had no pride left to protect. Condition 2, Saul continued. You will resign from the HOA board, which I believe you've already been removed from, and you will move out of Riverview Heights within 30 days. The neighbors have filed a class action petition to have you evicted, so this just speeds up the inevitable. Linda flinched. The penthouse was her identity. Without it, she was nobody. And condition 3, Saul said, a small smile playing on his lips. Restitution for damages. I told you, I don't have millions, Linda whispered. Bob locked the accounts. We know, Saul said. We aren't asking for millions in cash. We are asking for assets. Saul flipped to the last page of the agreement. Mr. Thompson has expressed an interest in a particular asset to cover a portion of the legal fees and emotional distress. We want the 2023 Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon. The room went silent. Linda stared at me, her mouth agape. My car? You want my car? It's currently accruing fees in my lot, I said. Storage fees, impound fees, legal fees. Honestly, Linda, by the time this goes to trial, the fees will be worth more than the car. I'm doing you a favor. I'm taking a liability off your hands. That car is my baby, she whispered, tears finally spilling over. Real tears this time. Tears for possession, the only thing she actually loved. It's a nice car, I agreed. It will look great with my company logo on the door. You're going to use it for towing? She asked, horrified. No, I said. I'm going to use it as a courtesy shuttle for my drivers. When their trucks break down, they'll ride in comfort. It seems poetic. Linda looked at Bob. Bob, let him take the car. Just end this. Bob nodded. Sign the papers, Linda. She picked up the pen. Her hand shook so badly she could barely form the letters. She signed her name on the dotted line. Linda Sterling. With that signature, she signed away her home, her reputation, and her prized possession. One more thing, I said as she finished. She looked up, defeated. The vanity plate, I said. The one that says Lady Boss. Leave it. I want that too. Wexler closed his briefcase. Is that all? That's all, Saul said, gathering our files. Pleasure doing business. We walked out of the conference room. As the door closed, I heard Linda put her head on the table and start to sob. It wasn't performance anymore. It was the sound of a bubble bursting. We rode the elevator down in silence. When we hit the lobby, Saul turned to me and grinned. You know, usually I advise clients to take the cash. But taking the G-Wagon? That was cold, Mike. Ice cold. She wanted to park there so badly. I said, putting on my sunglasses. Now she never has to worry about parking again. I walked out of the building and into the bright afternoon sun. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from the bank. A wire transfer from Bob Sterling's lawyers covering the contract termination fees. A separate settlement we had reached to keep his company afloat. It was enough to buy 3 new heavy wreckers. But I didn't care about the money. I walked to the parking lot, where my Ford F-150 was waiting. I climbed in, started the engine, and drove toward the impound lot. I had a G-Wagon to wrap. I was thinking bright yellow, with Thompson Towing in bold black letters on the side. And maybe, just maybe, I'd park in spot 404 for a few days, just to let the neighbors see it. Justice is blind, they say. But in my experience, justice drives a hard bargain, and sometimes it drives a German SUV. One part left, the peace, the restoration, the quiet return to normal. Because after you slay the dragon, you still have to go home and park your truck. There's a specific shade of yellow that we use for the company fleet. It's called safety yellow. It's bright, it's obnoxious, and it is designed to be seen from space. It screams utility. It screams caution. It screams work. 2 weeks after the summit, I stood in the bay of my detailing shop and watched the final strip of vinyl wrap being applied to the vehicle formerly known as Linda Sterling's Pride and Joy. The pearl white paint was gone, hidden beneath a layer of aggressive, industrial yellow. On the side doors in bold black block letters were the words, Thompson City-Wide Towing, and right below that, in slightly smaller font, Courtesy Shuttle. It was a desecration of luxury, and it was beautiful. Barney walked up next to me, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked at the G-Wagon. Then he looked at me. He tried to keep a straight face, but he couldn't. A grin split his face. "It looks like a bumblebee on steroids, boss," Barney said. "It looks like justice, Barney," I corrected. "How's the interior?" "We put the heavy-duty rubber floor mats in," Barney reported, "and seat covers, the kind that resist grease and coffee spills. Nothing fancy." "Perfect." I walked around to the back. The vanity plate Lady Boss was gone. In its place was a standard commercial fleet plate. I had taken the Lady Boss plate and mounted it on the wall of the employee break room, right above the time clock. A little reminder to the crew: arrogance expires. Hourly wages are forever. "Take it for a spin," I told Barney. "Go pick up the night shift crew. And hey, drive through Riverview Heights on your way back, just to test the suspension." Barney saluted and hopped into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life. That powerful German V8 now serving the humble purpose of ferrying tow truck drivers to their shifts. As it rolled out of the garage, I felt the final knot of tension in my shoulders loosen. I drove home in my F-150. It was a Friday evening, the time of the week when the city exhales. When I pulled into the Riverview Heights garage, the atmosphere was different. It's hard to describe, but the air felt lighter. The garage wasn't just a place to store cars anymore. It was a community that had survived a siege. I drove down the ramp to level B2. A moving truck was parked in the loading dock, the actual loading dock, not a fire lane. Movers were hauling boxes out of freight elevator. Expensive furniture, designer lamps, boxes of clothes. Standing by the elevator was Linda. She was wearing jeans and a t-shirt. No sunglasses. No heels. She looked small. She was holding a box of what looked like kitchenware. I slowed my truck to a crawl. I didn't honk. I didn't rev the engine. I just rolled past her, the quiet rumble of my tires the only sound. She looked up. Our eyes met through the windshield. There was no anger left in her face. There was no entitlement. There was just a profound, exhausted sadness. She saw me. She saw the man she had tried to destroy, the man she had called to help. She looked at my truck, then she looked away, focusing on the cardboard box in her hands. She knew that she had brought this on herself. She knew that every box she packed was a receipt for her own behavior. I drove past her without stopping. There was no need for a final witty remark. There was no need to rub it in. Her life was a punishment. Losing her home, her status, and her car was far worse than anything I could say to her. I rounded the corner to spot 404. It was empty, waiting for me. The white lines I had painted were still bright. The rubber bumper guard was still there. The sign, Reserved Parking, Unit 12B, towing enforced, gleamed under fluorescent lights. I backed the truck in. I checked my mirrors. I lined it up perfectly, leaving exactly 10 inches on either side. I shifted into park. I turned off the ignition. Silence. No screaming. No threats. No police sirens. Just the ticking of my cooling engine and the distant hum of the city. I stepped out of the truck. Mr. Henderson, the retired judge from 4A, was walking his poodle nearby. He saw me and stopped. He raised his cane in a silent salute. "Quiet night, Mike," he said. "Quiet night, Judge," I replied. "They say the penthouse is going on the market next week," Henderson said, a twinkle in his eye. "Hopefully, the new owners read the bylaws. If they don't," I smiled, patting the fender of my truck, "I'll be here." I took the elevator up to my apartment. I walked out onto the balcony and looked at the view. The river was dark and calm, reflecting the city lights. The chaos of the last few months felt like a fever dream. I thought about Bob Sterling. I heard he was rebranding his company, trying to distance himself from the scandal. He'd survive. Money usually does. But he'd be looking over his shoulder for a long time, checking the fine print, wondering if the guy in the work boots was actually the guy holding the keys to the kingdom. I thought about Linda. She was probably driving a rental car tonight, heading to a smaller apartment, maybe in a zip code where nobody knew her name. She had learned the hard way that the world doesn't bend to your will just because you scream at it. And I thought about myself. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't a vigilante. I was just a guy who understood the value of a contract. I went to the fridge and grabbed a cold beer. I sat down on the patio chair and put my feet up on the railing. My phone buzzed. A text from Barney. Attached was a photo. It was a yellow G-Wagon, Parked in front of the diner where the night crew was grabbing breakfast. A group of burly tow truck drivers were posing in front of it, giving thumbs up, eating breakfast burritos. The caption read, asterisk ride smooth boss. The guys love the heated seats. Asterisk. I chuckled and typed back, keep it clean. And don't park in the fire lane. I took a sip of my beer. It tasted like victory. The world is full of chaos. It's full of people who think they're the main character, who think that rules are for other people, who think that kindness is weakness and silence is submission. They push and they push and they push. But sometimes they push the wrong person. Sometimes they push a man who knows exactly where the line is drawn. I looked down at the parking garage entrance one last time. The moving truck was pulling away, carrying the last remnants of the Sterling Empire out of Riverview Heights. The gate closed behind it with a solid, final thud. My spot was safe. My home was quiet. I took another sip. Didn't know I was the sheriff. I whispered to the night air, but I guess I am now. I finished the beer, stood up, and went inside. I had an early shift tomorrow. A overturned semi on the highway. Real work. Dirty work. The kind of work that keeps the world moving while the Lindis of the world sleep. I washed my face, turned off the lights, and went to sleep. And for the first time in months, I didn't dream about parking. I dreamt of open roads and green lights.